What if society's cruelest rejection became the doorway to discovering your truest worth? Tonight's story is about Amara, a young woman whose rich, dark skin was seen as a flaw in a world that prized lighter complexions above all else. Born into a society poisoned by colorism, she faced rejection from her own community, her own family, and every potential suitor who deemed her shade too dark to be desirable. But when an ancient vampire lord arrived in her colonial town, he saw something that everyone else had missed entirely. Lord Dorian Nightshade had witnessed centuries of changing beauty standards, and when he looked at Amara, he saw perfection that transcended any human prejudice. This is a story about recognizing true beauty beyond society's toxic standards, about finding love that celebrates your authentic self, and discovering that sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who refuses to let others dim their light. If you believe that every shade of beauty deserves to be celebrated and cherished, hit that subscribe button now, because this story will illuminate the power of loving yourself exactly as you are. Amara Okafor stood at the edge of the village gathering, her rich, ebony skin gleaming in the Caribbean sunlight, as she watched the other young women laugh and dance at the harvest celebration. At 21, she had learned to position herself in the shadows, having grown accustomed to being overlooked and dismissed by a community that valued lighter skin above all else. "Look at Amara hiding again," whispered her cousin Clara, whose café au lait complexion had earned her 3 marriage proposals before her 19th birthday. "Such a shame about her color. She'd almost be pretty if she weren't so dark." The words stung, though Amara had heard variations of them her entire life. In their small town of Port Celeste, established by mixed European and African families generations ago, a rigid hierarchy had developed based on skin tone. The lighter your complexion, the higher your social standing, the better your marriage prospects, the more respect you commanded. "Amara, come away from there," her mother Grace called from across the courtyard. "Standing in the sun will only make you darker. How many times must I tell you to stay in the shade?" Amara obediently moved under the palm trees, though she wondered what difference it made. Her skin was already the deep, rich brown of polished mahogany, beautiful by any reasonable standard, but considered a mark of shame in her prejudiced community. "The Morrison boy is here," her mother continued, approaching with barely concealed desperation. "Perhaps if you wore the pale yellow dress and stayed out of direct light, he might consider speaking with you." James Morrison was the son of a successful merchant, known for his preference for women so light-skinned they could nearly pass for white. The idea that he might show interest in Amara was more hope than expectation, but her mother clung to any possibility of securing her daughter's future. "Mama," Amara said gently, "we both know James Morrison has no interest in someone who looks like me." "Why pretend otherwise?" "Because you're 21 and still unmarried," Grace replied sharply. "Do you want to end up alone, working as someone's servant for the rest of your life?" The threat hung heavy between them. In their society, unmarried women of Amara's shade had few options beyond domestic service or worse. Beauty, wealth, and social standing all flowed toward those blessed with lighter complexions, while darker-skinned women were relegated to the margins of society. As if summoned by their conversation, James Morrison approached their group, his eyes scanning the available young women with the calculating gaze of someone selecting merchandise. His attention passed over Amara as if she were invisible, settling instead on Clara and her friends. "Miss Clara," he said with a charming smile, "you look radiant this evening. Might I have the honor of the next dance?" Amara watched her cousin float into James's arms, their matching light brown skin creating the kind of harmonious picture that their society celebrated. Around them, other couples formed, all carefully matched by color, all conforming to the unspoken rules that governed their world. "Perhaps next time," her mother murmured. But they both knew there wouldn't be a next time. Men like James Morrison didn't suddenly develop appreciation for darker beauty. As the evening wore on, Amara found herself retreating further into the shadows, both literally and figuratively. She had grown skilled at making herself small, at occupying spaces where her unfortunate coloring wouldn't offend anyone's aesthetic sensibilities. But as she stood beneath the swaying palms, watching a celebration she would never truly be part of, Amara caught sight of a figure that made her breath catch. A tall, imposing man in elegant evening wear had arrived at the gathering, his pale skin and aristocratic bearing marking him as European nobility. Unlike every other man present, his eyes swept the crowd with genuine interest rather than prejudiced assessment. And when his gaze found hers across the courtyard, he didn't look away. For the first time in her life, someone was seeing Amara, really seeing her, instead of dismissing her based on the color of her skin. Lord Dorian Nightshade moved through the harvest celebration with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to command. His pale skin and expensive European attire immediately marking him as someone of significant importance. Conversations quieted as he passed, heads turning to catch glimpses of the mysterious nobleman who had appeared in their small colonial town. "Who is that?" whispered voices throughout the gathering, but Amara barely heard the speculation. She was transfixed by the way this stranger's silver eyes had found her in the shadows and remained fixed on her face with unmistakable interest. "Lord Nightshade," announced the village elder, hurrying to greet their distinguished visitor. "We're honored by your presence at our humble celebration. Please allow me to introduce you to our finest families." But Dorian's attention never wavered from Amara. With purposeful steps, he crossed the courtyard, leaving a wake of confused murmurs as he bypassed the carefully arranged introductions to the town's eligible young ladies. "Miss," he said, offering Amara a perfect bow that would have been appropriate for greeting royalty. "I don't believe we've been introduced." Amara felt heat flood her cheeks, acutely aware that every eye in the gathering was now focused on this impossible scene. "I'm Amara Okafor, my lord, but I think perhaps you've mistaken me for someone else." "Have I?" Dorian's smile was warm and genuine. "I was looking for the most beautiful woman at this gathering, and my eyes led me directly to you." "I see no mistake in that." The words hit Amara like a physical shock. Beautiful. No one had ever called her beautiful. Pretty enough, perhaps, for someone of her color. Acceptable if one could overlook her unfortunate darkness. But beautiful, never. "My lord!" Grace hurried over, her face a mixture of confusion and social panic. "Surely you meant to meet my niece Clara." "She's just there, dancing with young Mr. Morrison. Much more suitable for a gentleman of your obvious refinement." Dorian's gaze flicked briefly to Clara, before returning to Amara with obvious preference. "Suitable for what, exactly?" I asked, "to meet the most beautiful woman here, and I'm quite certain I'm speaking with her." Around them, the gathering had gone almost completely silent. The idea that a wealthy European nobleman would show interest in the darkest-skinned woman present was so far outside their understanding that people seemed frozen in disbelief. "Perhaps you don't understand our local customs," James Morrison interjected, abandoning Clara mid-dance to insert himself into the conversation. "Different standards of aesthetic appreciation apply here. I could introduce you to some lovely young ladies who would be more appropriate companions. Appropriate for whom? Dorian asked mildly, though something dangerous flickered in his silver eyes. Are you suggesting I don't know beauty when I see it? Well, no, but James gestured vaguely toward Amara, as if her appearance explained everything. But what? Please enlighten me about what makes this magnificent woman inappropriate for my attention. The direct challenge hung in the air, like a gauntlet thrown down. James looked around desperately for support, but found only confused faces and uncomfortable silence. Her skin, he finally said weakly. She's too dark. It's not what gentlemen prefer. Dorian's laugh was like silver bells in winter air. Gentlemen prefer whatever they're told to prefer by society's arbitrary standards. I prefer to think for myself. He turned back to Amara, extending his hand. Miss Okafor, would you honor me with a dance? Amara stared at his offered hand, pale against the darkness that everyone considered her flaw. My lord, I should warn you. Dancing with me will cause talk. It might damage your reputation here. My reputation, Dorian said softly, will survive the scandal of appreciating true beauty. The question is whether you're brave enough to let yourself be appreciated. Standing in that courtyard, faced with the first genuine appreciation she'd ever received, Amara realized she was about to make a choice that would change everything. She placed her dark hand in his pale one, and together they stepped into the light. The moment Amara's hand touched Dorian's, the gathering seemed to hold its collective breath. No one could remember ever seeing such a stark contrast, her rich, dark skin against his pale complexion, or witnessing such obvious appreciation for what their society considered undesirable. As Dorian led her into the dance, Amara felt exposed in ways that went beyond physical visibility. Everyone is staring, she whispered, acutely aware of the shocked faces surrounding them. Let them stare, Dorian replied, guiding her through the steps with practiced elegance. They're witnessing something they've never seen before. Someone celebrating beauty instead of condemning it. But your color is magnificent, Dorian interrupted firmly. Your skin is like polished ebony, rich and deep and absolutely stunning. Anyone who can't see that is suffering from a poverty of vision, not a defect in your appearance. As they danced, Amara began to notice things about her partner that set him apart from ordinary men. His strength was inhuman, allowing him to guide her effortlessly through complex steps. His skin was cool to the touch despite the warm evening air, and his eyes held depths that spoke of far more years than his apparent age of 30. You're not entirely human, are you? Amara asked quietly, her intuition cutting through social conditioning. Dorian's smile revealed teeth that were just slightly too sharp to be normal. Very perceptive. Does that frighten you? Should it? You've shown me more genuine kindness in 10 minutes than most people have in my entire life. I'm a vampire, Dorian said simply. I've existed for over 800 years, and in all that time I've learned to appreciate beauty in all its forms. Your people's obsession with lighter skin is a recent prejudice that would have been incomprehensible to many of the civilizations I've known. 800 years? Amara absorbed this revelation with surprising calm. And what did those other civilizations think of women who looked like me? They thought you were goddesses, Dorian said with complete sincerity. Queens, artists, priestesses, objects of worship and desire. The ancient Kushite kingdoms, the great empires of Mali and Songhai, They celebrated skin like yours as the height of beauty and nobility. Amara felt tears threatening at this unfamiliar validation. But here now, I'm considered the lowest form of beauty. Here now, you're surrounded by people too ignorant to recognize treasure when it's before them, Dorian corrected. But not everyone shares their blindness. As the dance ended, Dorian kept hold of her hand, addressing the silent crowd that had watched their every movement. Ladies and gentlemen, I find myself curious about your local customs. This remarkable woman has been presented to me as somehow less desirable due to her coloring. Could someone explain the logic behind such an assessment? The question hung in the air, challenging the entire foundation of their social hierarchy. James Morrison stepped forward, his face flushed with indignation. It's simply the natural order, he said defensively. Lighter skin is more refined, more civilized, more attractive. According to whom? Dorian asked with genuine curiosity. Which authority established these standards? What scientific principle supports the idea that less melanin equals greater beauty? Well, it's just everyone knows what they've been taught to believe, Dorian corrected. But beliefs aren't facts, and social prejudices aren't natural laws. He turned to address the entire gathering. I've traveled the world for centuries, and I can assure you that beauty comes in every shade humanity has to offer. To limit your appreciation to one narrow range is to blind yourself to most of creation's magnificence. Standing beside this powerful ancient being who saw her as beautiful rather than flawed, Amara felt something she'd never experienced before. Pride in her own appearance. Your shade, Dorian said softly, his words meant for her alone but carrying clearly in the silence, is not darkness to be hidden. It's light to be celebrated. In the weeks following the harvest celebration, Dorian's continued presence in Port Celeste began to shift the town's entire social dynamic. His obvious preference for Amara's company, combined with his wealth and influence, forced people to reconsider their long-held prejudices about beauty and worth. I don't understand it, Clara confessed to Amara as they walked through the market. Lord Nightshade could have his choice of any woman here, yet he seeks out your company constantly. How do you explain such a thing? Perhaps, Amara said with newfound confidence, he sees beauty where others have been trained to see faults. The change in Amara herself was remarkable. Under Dorian's appreciative gaze and genuine respect, she had begun to carry herself differently, shoulders back, head high, no longer trying to minimize her presence or hide in shadows. You've transformed, her mother observed one evening as they prepared dinner. You move like someone who knows her own worth. Because I'm finally learning what that worth actually is, Amara replied. Instead of accepting other people's diminished estimation of me. That night, as she and Dorian walked along the moonlit beach, he shared more of his perspective on beauty and prejudice. In my 8 centuries of existence, he said, I've watched beauty standards shift like tides. What one era worships, another condemns. What one culture celebrates, another abhors. The only constant is that true beauty, the kind that comes from character, intelligence, and authenticity, transcends all temporary fashions. And you see that in me. I see extraordinary beauty in every aspect of who you are, Dorian confirmed. Your rich skin that glows like burnished gold in candlelight. Your intelligence that cuts through social nonsense to find truth. Your strength that has endured years of undeserved rejection without becoming bitter or cruel. As they walked, Amara found herself sharing dreams she'd never dared voice before. Dreams of travel, of education, of making a difference in the world beyond the narrow confines of Port Celeste. I could help you achieve all of that, Dorian said softly. But first, there's something you need to know about what I'm offering. What do you mean? I mean that my feelings for you have grown beyond simple appreciation. I love you, Amara, completely, eternally, without reservation. And if you'll have me, I want to offer you something unprecedented. What? Immortality. The chance to spend eternity discovering everything you're capable of becoming. The power to help change how the world sees beauty like yours. He paused, studying her face in the moonlight. But it would mean becoming like me, a vampire. Amara felt her heart race at the magnitude of what he was offering. And if I choose that path? Then you become my equal in every way. My partner for eternity, my queen, someone with the power and time to reshape how societies think about beauty and worth. Standing on that beach, looking at the man who had seen light where others saw only darkness, Amara realized that her choice was already made. Yes, she said simply. Yes to immortality. Yes to partnership. Yes to spending forever proving that beauty comes in every shade. As Dorian gathered her into his arms, Amara understood that she had found something more precious than social acceptance. She had found someone who celebrated her authentic self without reservation. Years later, as an immortal couple who traveled the world, challenging prejudice and celebrating diversity, Amara and Dorian became champions for those whose beauty didn't fit narrow societal standards. They used their combined power and influence to support communities where all shades were valued, where worth wasn't determined by skin color, where beauty was recognized in its infinite variety. Standing in the gardens of their estate centuries later, Amara reflected on the journey from shadow to light, not by changing herself, but by finding someone who recognized that her darkness was, indeed, a form of illumination. In Dorian's eternal love, Amara learned that true beauty doesn't conform to society's limitations. It transcends them, transforms them, and ultimately illuminates them. And if you believe that beauty comes in every shade and deserves to be celebrated in all its forms, make sure that you hit that subscribe button and share this story with anyone who needs to be reminded of their inherent worth. Tell us in the comments about a time when someone saw your beauty when others couldn't. And remember, you don't need to change to be worthy of love. You need to find someone wise enough to recognize your existing radiance. Until next time, never let society's narrow standards dim your natural light, because you are beautiful exactly as you are.